Ever hear a nutrition tip, a healthy eating program, and think, great for them, but that's not going to work for me and my life? Let's talk, because while not every single tip or strategy is meant for us, what works for me may not be the same thing that works for you and your life, your routine, your schedule. Maybe you're a caregiver of an elderly parent. Maybe you do a kind of job where you have a different schedule every single week. Sometimes we focus too hard on what we think it should look like for us and trying to fit ourselves, trying to bend and mold ourselves into this ideal of what we think it should look like, instead of adapting healthy eating to fit in with our life. So instead of bending ourselves, bending the strategy. And especially, this is true if you're a parent, if you're a mom, if you're a dad, and you're juggling all the things. Maybe you have little kids, maybe you have older kids with a lot of pickup and drop-offs and after-school activities to be thinking about. Maybe you're not sleeping much these days. Maybe you have other health things going on. I know for me, as a mom of 2 little kids, this is something that I have struggled with in the past, especially immediately postpartum, and that year postpartum and between pregnancies where I was like, you're in a different stage of life. Your routine looks different. Your capacity looks different. So I was trying to force things to happen that just were not realistic for my season of life. And of course, there's going to be different seasons of life and even a different pace to your life according to where you are in the year. If you're a parent, summer may look way different than around the holidays, than around the start of the school year. So we want to adjust our expectations accordingly. So for me right now, both of my kids who are 4 and 2 love to sleep with their parents. They love to get up in the middle of the night. We're not always sleeping through the night. So for me, expecting to get up at 5:15 in the morning to go to that class at the gym, it's not in the cards. It ain't gonna happen. So for me, what works right now when I'm thinking about exercise is to do it in the middle of the day. That's just one example based on me and where I am right now. But I want to get into 2 client stories that I have as examples of how you can apply the same nutrition principle to very different lives. And of course, I'm going to keep them anonymous. What I want you to take away is not, okay, I should do exactly what this person did because they saw a great improvement. Instead, I want you to think through, what is something that I have been forcing lately that I need to take a look at again? How can I readjust what I'm trying to do to actually fit in with my life? What matters here is the decision-making process these 2 women did, not really the exact foods, the exact timing, the exact 5-step plan, but instead take away, okay, what did they realize that they needed for themselves? Because the goal here is progress. It's not perfection. And it's about prioritization of their goals based on what matters to them, what's important to them right now. These 2 women show how it's not true that it has to look the same for everyone, and why personalizing their nutrition, how they want to fit it into their lives, how that matters. I'd like for you to notice, do either of these examples feel similar to your own situation, or are you somewhere in between? Are you something else entirely? I'd love to hear in the comments below. I'm going to take a sip of coffee before I go into this. First example, she is a professional woman in her 50s. She works from home most days of the week. She's on the phone and virtual meetings a lot. She's actually pretty sedentary sitting at her desk at home. She does tend to hit the ground running in the morning. When it comes to work, she feels like she can't take a break. When she wakes up, she is nursing her coffee all morning, so getting in a lot of caffeine. She does take stretch breaks. She does get up from time to time, and occasionally she'll eat a snack if she's really hungry. Often she doesn't eat until the late afternoon or the evening. So she would often skip breakfast, maybe even skip lunch, and not eat until later in the evening. She didn't feel very hungry in the morning. Sometimes she gets hungry midday, but she would often simply just work through it, power through, ignore those hunger signals instead of giving her a break. Sometimes she'll drink more coffee or switch to another caffeinated beverage. She was pretty low energy during the day. She was constantly seeking caffeine, seeking ways to stay awake, to stay on top of things. She was sedentary much of the day. What's interesting is that her pattern was not a conscious decision, right? This is just a routine, a pattern that she would get into, and her day would unfold with, at the end of the day, not having a lot of nutrition, not having a lot of energy. And after we got started, got some background, really trying to get at, okay, what is important to you and what is holding you back? What felt hardest for her was taking a break at work in order to eat a breakfast, eat a snack, address that hunger cue midday that was telling her, hey, we got to eat something. Remembering to eat, listening to those hunger cues were the hardest thing for her because she really enjoys her work. So the issue here wasn't really her knowledge of healthy food. She knows what's good for her. The issue also wasn't not caring about what she ate. She has, of course, heard during her life that breakfast is important. It's one of the first things she said was, I'm just not much of a breakfast person. And of course, she knows that she should eat when she's hungry. But sometimes it's not really about the knowledge, it's about the execution. Because knowing and doing are two completely different things, especially when your day is getting busy and when you have competing priorities. So knowledge is not the same as execution. How do we get to the execution part? So the first thing we did was recognize her pattern, and she identified what she wanted to change and how she wanted to feel. She wanted to feel more energized during the day, more capable, and like she was taking care of herself and her health instead of ignoring her needs. We worked together to come up with a plan, and she wanted to focus on eating her first meal earlier in the day in order to support her energy and not have to rely so heavily on the caffeine. So that caffeine, that coffee was dulling her hunger cues, and she wanted to try to address that by actually eating something earlier. She started eating breakfast within a few hours of waking, and it wasn't a huge breakfast to start off because, like she had said, she's not always hungry. She's not in the habit of eating breakfast. So we started with a small breakfast within a few hours of when she woke up. Sometimes that would be after she had already started work. To make sure that she's actually taking that break from work and taking the time to eat, she set a few timers on her phone as a reminder. She said a few because, like we all know, sometimes you just ignore the first one and keep going. I want to point out here that she knew from past experiences that she would need this external reminder, this alarm, to help her be successful. When I followed up with her, she was feeling so much better. She had more energy, more mental focus during her work day. She was so happy that she felt like she could easily keep going with this new routine of simply eating earlier in the day. And this was a difference that she noticed after just 1 week. So the key takeaway for her was that the simple act of eating earlier in the day really made a difference to how she felt throughout the day. So for her, it wasn't about major weight loss. It wasn't about follow this meal plan exactly to the T. It was about where are my problems starting and how can I make myself feel better according to my goals and my health. All right, so this second lady that I want to talk about, her day looks nothing like the first case study. This was a woman in her 40s who works overnight shifts cleaning in a hospital. She had 2 kids that were school age that she was solely responsible for in the afternoon with picking up from school and handling their afternoon. To give you a background of what her routine looked like, she would nap for an hour or two before her evening shift started. She was on her feet overnight. Cleaning is a hard job. It's a physically taxing job. She would snack throughout the night and often would do caffeinated coffee or an energy drink to help her stay awake. When she got home, she would go straight to bed for about 4 to 6 hours. Then she'd wake up, she'd have a snack and dinner with her family in the evening. Now, she did say to me it was not consistent how much sleep she got day to day. And sleep could be a whole nother video. Let me know if you're interested in that in the comments below. But she felt like she was running on empty, that she was stretched thin, that she was pulled in different directions and just ending up feeling sluggish for most of the day. She felt like she didn't really have a set schedule for when to eat. She was doing a lot of snacking in a way that she described as grazing rather than feeling like it was planned. She felt like that when she was hungry was really unpredictable. Sometimes she would not be hungry at all for long stretches of times, and then other times she would feel like she was ravenous. She questioned, okay, when should I eat since I work third shift. It doesn't look the same as other people. Her life is nothing like the typical advice of eat 3 square meals every 3 or 4 hours during the day. Trying to force it just made her feel like a failure and like she wasn't doing a good job taking care of herself, which is not true, right? Going back to what I said at the beginning of the video, we cannot contort ourselves to this ideal if it is not fitting into our lives. In reality, she just needed a different approach. Her problem, it wasn't lack of discipline. It wasn't a lack of willpower. It was more of a lack of any sort of plan that would help support her nutrition goals. And when I say plan, I don't mean I eat this every day, mapped out perfectly for weeks going forward. A plan could be a lot looser than that. And specifically, we want a plan that respects her reality and allows for flexibility. So a flexible plan. And that really worked for her and what she felt like she was capable of right now. She was often skipping meals, just like our first case study. She was often ignoring her hunger cues and then overeating at other parts of the day or night. She felt like she was both eating too much and not enough. Do you ever feel that way yourself? I'm eating too much of this, but not enough of that. I'll take another sip of coffee. She wanted to focus on a healthy and balanced pre-work meal. So that dinner that she has with her family, that's a good touchstone point for her to spend with her family in the evening. And she also wanted to plan to bring one snack to work with her. She was not trying to focus too hard on the exact timing of when she ate, but instead, okay, here are the 2 meals and snacks that I'm going to have be kind of the pillars of my day. I'm going to make sure that they are balanced. They have a little protein. They have fruits and vegetables. I'm going to plan to bring a snack instead of relying on the vending machine at the hospital or the snacks in the break room. So after a few weeks of this, she felt like her routine was a little less chaotic, a little less, happening on the fly. And while she was still tired a lot because she is working third shift and not always getting enough sleep, she felt that her energy was more stable during those overnight work shifts. She even felt more motivated on other areas of her health that she wanted to improve, like her sleep. In her case, flexibility of the timing of her eating really mattered most, but still having somewhat of a plan of a few things to eat each evening helped give her a framework and that much needed fuel to get through her shift. So tell me which of these case studies you may have related to more, or are you somewhere in the middle? These examples specifically show why breaking that skipping meals, overeating cycle isn't about copying someone else's plan, isn't about eating at the exact same time. It's not about that. It's about recognizing your own patterns and the reason behind them. And if you're wondering, wait, what cycle? What did you just say? Then watch the earlier videos in this series, which I'll link right here. It'll help these 2 stories make even more sense.